What happens when a dream that took years to build shatters in a single heartbeat? The stadium was roaring. The clock was ticking. Florida State was inches away from a statement win. And at the center of it all was Jordan Travis, the golden boy of Tallahassee, the quarterback who had become a symbol of hope for an entire fanbase. And then, silence. One play. One step. One crack. The crowd didn't understand it at first. Not until he didn't get up. Not until his hand gripped the air like he was trying to hold on to something no one else could see. Trainers rushed in. Teammates took a knee. And 80,000 people stared, frozen, witnessing the moment a future was rewritten in real time. That's not just an injury, one commentator whispered. That could be a career. But this story, it's not just about football. It's about identity, sacrifice, and what it takes to stand up when the world expects you to stay down. Before the injury, before the NFL, before the headlines, there was just a kid from West Palm Beach, chasing something bigger than himself. This is the story they don't tell on ESPN. This is the rise and fall of Jordan Travis. Before the stadiums, before the headlines, there was just Jordan. Every great athlete's story begins far from the spotlight. For Jordan Travis, that story began under the burning Florida sun, in the city of West Palm Beach, where heat waves danced off cracked pavement and dreams were something you had to fight for. It wasn't a place known for giving second chances, but it was where Jordan learned to create his own first. Born on May 2, 2000, Jordan wasn't handed greatness. He earned it, inch by inch, breath by breath. His family wasn't wealthy. There were no private coaches, no elite academies. Just a close-knit household where faith, discipline, and love were currency. His mother, Amanda, a strong woman with a quiet will, worked long hours, sometimes 2 jobs, just to keep food on the table. His father, Tony, was a man of few words but heavy values. If you want something, Tony once told Jordan, you don't wait for someone to give it to you. You run for it. And run he did. By age 7, Jordan was already different. Not just fast, fierce. Every backyard game was a Super Bowl. Every race with his older brother, Devin, ended in scraped knees and laughter. But even back then, Jordan didn't just play to win. He played like he had something to prove. He wasn't the biggest. He wasn't the strongest. But there was something raw in his eyes. A silent fire. Coaches noticed. Neighborhood kids noticed. Even strangers at the park would stop and stare when he took off with the football. But talent alone wasn't enough. When he tried out for the school team in 6th grade, the coach shook his head. Quarterback. You're too small. Play wide receiver. Maybe cornerback. Jordan didn't argue. He nodded. Trained harder. Threw passes until his arms ached and fingers blistered. By 8th grade, they let him try again. This time, he didn't just win the spot, he owned it. He read defenses like they were open books. He made throws no one expected. He turned broken plays into highlights. Still, the whispers followed him. He's good. But can he handle high school ball? The Benjamin School, that's where everything changed. Under the Friday night lights, Jordan became a local legend. Game after game, he silenced doubters. But behind the scenes, it wasn't easy. He battled injuries. A torn ligament in his junior year nearly cost him his season. But worse than the physical pain was the rejection. Despite his stats, despite the highlight reels, big-name colleges weren't calling. Too risky. Too raw. Not SEC material. There were nights Jordan sat on the edge of his bed, phone in hand, staring at the screen, hoping a coach would text. A call. Anything. Nothing came. His friends celebrated D1 offers. Meanwhile, Jordan kept training. Kept hoping. Kept fighting. When offers finally came, they weren't from powerhouses. But Jordan didn't care. He wanted one thing, a chance. He committed to Louisville first, but it wasn't the right fit. After transferring out, many thought he was done. You're wasting your shot, someone told him. But then came Florida State. A storied program. A new coaching staff. And a spot that no one else wanted, backup quarterback. Most players would have turned it down. Jordan saw it differently. It's not about where you start, he told his mom. It's about what you do when it's finally your turn. And with that, he packed his bags, left behind the only home he'd ever known, and walked into a locker room full of giants, doubters, and ghosts of Heisman winners past. He wasn't a star yet, but something had started. Sometimes your biggest moment comes when no one's watching. When Jordan Travis walked into the Florida State locker room for the first time, the air felt heavy. You could smell legacy in the walls. Names like Jameis Winston and Charlie Ward still echoed through the halls like ghosts. National championships, Heisman trophies, and now Jordan, the transfer kid with no hype, no headlines, and nothing guaranteed. He wasn't the starter. Heck, he wasn't even second string. Just another number in a jersey. Most wrote him off. But what they didn't know was, Jordan wasn't here for attention. He was here to wait, to watch, and when the time came to strike. For his first season at FSU, Jordan barely saw the field. He sat quietly through meetings, stayed late after practice, studied film when others went out. He memorized the playbook like scripture. Some teammates called him too quiet, others called him obsessed. But Jordan didn't care. Because behind his silence, something was building, a storm waiting to be unleashed. That moment came in 2020. Midway through the season, with injuries piling up and the offense stalling, Coach Mike Norvell made a decision no one expected. Get Travis ready. His first real game? Against Jacksonville State. Not exactly a headline matchup, but for Jordan, it was everything. The nerves? Real. The pressure? Immense. But from the first snap, something clicked. He ran like lightning, threw with purpose, led the huddle like a general. Touchdown. Then another. And another. Florida State fans who had never even said his name were now chanting it. Jordan. 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 In that moment, the quiet backup became the heartbeat of the team. Over the next 2 seasons, Jordan Travis didn't just play, he transformed. He evolved into one of the most dangerous dual-threat quarterbacks in college football. Defenders feared his legs. Analysts praised his vision. Teammates followed his lead like soldiers. And fans? They fell in love. He wasn't polished like a 5-star recruit. He wasn't built like an NFL prototype. But he played with heart, raw, unfiltered heart. He'd scramble out of collapsing pockets and throw across his body like a magician. He'd take bone-rattling hits, then stand up smiling. He turned broken plays into masterpieces. The Seminoles hadn't seen this kind of spark in years. In 2022, the Travis-led FSU squad roared to national relevance. Wins stacked up. Critics fell silent. Jordan was on Heisman watch lists. NFL scouts began whispering his name. He wasn't just making plays, he was changing games. A clutch performance against Florida. A comeback win over LSU. Stadiums packed. National attention rising. And yet, through it all, Jordan stayed humble. In press conferences, he thanked his teammates. After wins, he texted his mom. At night, he still studied film like he was the backup. Why? Because he knew something no one else did. Glory is temporary. But the grind, that's eternal. By 2023, people were no longer asking, who is Jordan Travis? They were asking, can anyone stop him? He wasn't just a star, he was the soul of Florida State. The Seminoles were winning again. Recruits were flooding in. The swagger was back in Tallahassee, and it all started with a kid who was told he wasn't good enough. It felt like the beginning of a dynasty. But just when it seemed like the sky was the limit, something dark was waiting on the horizon. A moment. A hit. A nightmare that would freeze an entire stadium and stop a heart that once refused to quit. One moment he was a hero. The next, he was fighting for more than just football. It was supposed to be a celebration. November 18, 2023. Senior night. The final home game of the regular season. Jordan Travis, the heart and soul of Florida State football, was leading the Seminoles onto the field one last time. The crowd was electric. Over 79,000 fans packed into Doak Campbell Stadium, screaming his name. One last ride. Let's finish this, Jordan. He'd come so far. From an overlooked transfer to a program-defining leader. From doubts and silence to thunderous applause. FSU was undefeated. A college football playoff spot within reach. Travis was the center of it all. But then came the first quarter. FSU lined up on 2nd and 7. Jordan took the snap, rolled right. The pocket collapsed, and he did what he always did, improvise. Escape. Extend the play. He dodged the first defender. Slipped past a second. But then came the third. A helmet to the knee. A twist. A wait. And suddenly, he wasn't moving. At first, people thought he was just shaken up. Then came the silence. Jordan grabbed at his left leg, his face twisted in pain, not the kind you shake off, but the kind you feel in your gut, even from the stands. He didn't try to stand. Didn't even look toward the sideline. Just lay there, one hand clenched in a fist, the other reaching toward the sky, as if trying to hold on to something invisible, something slipping away. The roar turned to whispers. Then to nothing. You could hear the hum of the medical cart. The snap of latex gloves. The distant voice of a child asking, "Is he okay, Dad?" Players dropped to their knees. The FSU bench emptied. Coach Norvell sprinted to him. The trainers called for a cart before even assessing him on the field, a sign everyone recognized. The stadium that once thundered with his name now held its breath. As the cart approached, Jordan sat up, barely. He looked around one last time at the stadium he'd fought to revive. Tears streamed down his face, but not from the pain. From knowing. Knowing this was the end of something beautiful. The crowd rose. Even Florida's fans stood and clapped. Chants began again, but now they felt different. Jordan. 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 Not as a player, but as a man. A fighter. A legend. He raised a hand as the cart drove off, holding it in the air like a gladiator leaving the arena. But even then, you could see it in his eyes. He was scared. By the time the game ended, an FSU win, no one was celebrating. All eyes were on the hospital. The reports came in slowly. Then the confirmation. A serious leg injury. Season ending. Career threatening. That night, ESPN analysts lowered their voices. Coaches across the country sent prayers. The college football world paused. Because no one expected Jordan Travis, the most electric player in the nation, to fall like this. Hours later, from a hospital bed, Jordan posted a video. No filters. No background music. Just him, pale, bandaged, heartbroken. I'm grateful for every moment. Even this one. If this is how it ends, I'm proud of the fight. I love you, Knowles Nation. Forever. It wasn't scripted. It wasn't polished. But it was real. And that's why it hit so hard. The College Football Playoff Committee questioned FSU's chances without him. Pundits debated if he'd ever play again. NFL scouts hesitated. But none of that mattered to Jordan. He had bigger questions. Would he ever walk normally again? Would the pain ever stop? Was it all over? The hardest battles are fought when no one is watching. The question is, can you get back up? After the injury, the world moved on. FSU's season continued without him. They made it to a bowl game, but it didn't feel the same. The air was heavy. The stadium felt quieter. There was no number 13 to lead them. No Jordan Travis to push the team forward. But Jordan, he was still fighting. It wasn't on the field anymore. It was in a cold, sterile room, far from the bright lights of Doak Campbell Stadium. It was in the weight room, where he pushed his limits. It was in the hours of therapy, each moment of agony threatening to swallow him whole. It was in the silence of his home, where his body healed. But his mind was scarred. The doctors said it would take months for him to walk again. They said it would take years for him to play like he used to. But Jordan wasn't interested in what they said. He was interested in what he believed. Each morning, when the world was still asleep, Jordan dragged himself out of bed. He didn't have the luxury of sitting back and waiting for the injury to heal. He had to fight for every inch of recovery. First, it was simple movements, bending the knee. A few seconds of flexing his ankle. Then, little by little, he reintroduced himself to his body. He would lift weights, his legs shaking with the strain. He would jog, then fall. He would get back up. Every single time. But the pain never left. It was always there, lurking. A constant reminder of the risk. Of the price. The hardest part wasn't the physical recovery. It was the mental battle. Jordan would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering, would I ever be the same? Is this injury the end of my dreams? Can I get back on the field? The doubts crept in like shadows, growing darker with each passing day. NFL scouts stopped calling. Coaches at FSU didn't know if they should hold a spot for him. The world moved on. But Jordan kept fighting, not for the fame, not for the glory, but for the love of the game. Because football was never just a game for him. It was the one place where he felt whole. There was a day in April 2024 when Jordan thought about quitting. He was sitting in the rehab facility, staring at his crutches, the weight of the world on his shoulders. His knee was swollen. His body screamed for rest. The NFL draft was approaching. And no one was talking about Jordan Travis anymore. He was just a name on a list. A player with a past injury next to his name. The coaches who once praised him now barely acknowledged him. The scouts who once dreamed of his potential were now hesitant. No one was sure if he could recover. No one was sure if he could ever return to the player he once was. In that moment, Jordan sat alone, completely broken. The dream he'd fought for, the career he'd worked for, seemed to slip further and further away. Maybe they were right. Maybe he was done. But then, something changed. One day, Jordan looked at his reflection in the mirror. His eyes were tired, but they were determined. It wasn't about the NFL anymore. It wasn't about proving anyone wrong. It was about himself. I've got one more shot. That's what he told himself every morning. One more shot to prove that the dream wasn't over. That he could rise from the ashes. And with that decision, something inside him clicked. The doubt faded. The fear didn't disappear, but it didn't control him anymore. The NFL draft approached, but Jordan wasn't watching the mock drafts anymore. He wasn't reading the analysts' predictions. All he cared about was getting healthy, getting back to the field, and taking one more swing at the dream. He continued his rehab, tirelessly, day in, day out. And every time he ran sprints, or lifted weights, or threw a pass, it was like he was climbing toward something higher. Toward redemption. On April 2024, Jordan made a bold decision. He would enter the NFL draft. It wasn't just about getting drafted anymore. It was about proving to himself that his heart could carry him farther than the injury ever could. Days after submitting his name, Jordan received a call. It was the New York Jets. "We've been watching you. We see your heart. We see your drive. And we want you on our team." It wasn't the first-round pick he once dreamed of. But it didn't matter. Because he was back. Sometimes the hardest part isn't reaching your goal. It's realizing you've already given it your all. The NFL was no longer just a dream. It was his reality. Jordan Travis had done it. He had fought through the toughest battles, physically, mentally, and emotionally. He had come back from the abyss of injury, the crushing weight of doubt, and the silence of a world that had moved on without him. And now, he was on the verge of an NFL career with the New York Jets. A new chapter. A fresh start. But no one ever told him that the hardest part of his journey wasn't fighting to get back on the field. It was the moment when the field itself would slip through his fingers. The first few months with the Jets felt surreal. Training camp was grueling, but Jordan was relentless. He was back to doing what he loved. The speed, the competition, the spotlight. Every day felt like a victory, a reminder of everything he'd overcome. But even as the weeks passed, something wasn't right. His knee, the one that had almost ended his career, was giving him trouble. Not pain, not yet, but stiffness. Weakness. It wasn't the same. It didn't feel like it should. He pushed through. After all, that's what he'd done for years, right? But soon, it was clear, the old injury had left deeper scars than anyone had realized. It started during a scrimmage against the Philadelphia Eagles in preseason. Jordan felt a snap in his knee, a quick, sharp pain that made him stagger. It wasn't the kind of pain that left him on the ground, but it was enough to make him rethink everything. He limped to the sideline. Took a deep breath. Just a tweak, he told himself. But deep down, he knew. When the Jets' medical staff cleared him to return, it wasn't just the physical pain that bothered him. It was the realization that maybe, just maybe, his body couldn't handle the NFL grind. Days turned into weeks, and the stiffness didn't go away. Instead of getting stronger, Jordan found himself struggling to keep up with the fast-paced practices. The once familiar rhythm of football, the quick cuts, the deep throws, the explosive sprints, started to feel like mountains he couldn't climb. It wasn't just the knee anymore. His body was betraying him. His speed had slowed. His stamina wasn't what it used to be. And the whispers started. Jordan Travis is a fighter, but maybe not for the NFL. Is his body holding up? Maybe it's time to call it quits. Jordan hated the doubt. Hated the idea that after everything, his body might break before his spirit did. But there came a night, sitting in the hotel room after another practice, when he faced the hardest question of all. Can I still do this? Am I enough? It was a call to his mom that changed everything. Amanda Travis answered the phone, but the voice on the other end wasn't the same confident young man she'd raised. "Mom, I don't know if I can keep going. It's not just the pain. It's like my body's giving up on me." Amanda listened. She knew Jordan's heart. She knew the sacrifices he'd made, the battles he'd fought. But this was different. "Jordan, listen to me," she said, her voice steady, though filled with emotion. "You've already proven everything you needed to. You're not just a football player, baby. You're a fighter. You've already won, just by coming this far." But Jordan wasn't ready to hear it. "I don't want to quit," he said. "But I don't want to drag this out. I don't want to be remembered as the guy who couldn't finish." "You're more than football, Jordan." That's when it hit him. The realization he'd been avoiding. The next day, Jordan called the Jets' head coach. He asked for a private meeting, one that would change the course of his career. There, on a quiet bench in the locker room, Jordan made the hardest decision of his life. He was retiring. Not because he was weak. Not because he didn't have the heart. But because his body had finally told him, in no uncertain terms, that it had nothing left to give. Jordan Travis was hanging up his cleats at just 24 years old. It wasn't the ending anyone expected. But it was the one Jordan chose. The news broke fast. Social media exploded. Fans reacted with shock, disbelief, and sadness. But amid the surprise, there was an overwhelming wave of respect. People remembered the struggle, the heartbreak, the way he came back from the darkest days. They remembered his passion, his heart, his never-quit mentality. "Jordan Travis may have walked away from the NFL," the headlines read, "but he will always be remembered as a fighter." Jordan Travis didn't fade into obscurity after his retirement. He reinvented himself. He became a motivational speaker, sharing his journey with thousands of young athletes who dreamed of playing on the biggest stage, only to face their own battles. He also founded a foundation to support injured athletes, helping them transition from the playing field to life beyond sports. Jordan wasn't just a quarterback anymore. He was a symbol, a beacon of perseverance. It's not how you start or how you finish. It's how you leave an impression that lasts forever. Retirement hadn't been the end. For Jordan Travis, it had been the beginning of something far greater. As the years passed since he hung up his cleats, Jordan's name became synonymous with resilience, determination, and heart. He wasn't just a star on the field anymore. He was a living testament to the power of fighting against the odds. His story wasn't about football. It was about overcoming every obstacle that life threw at him and showing the world that you could find a way, even when the road ahead seemed impossible. Jordan had walked away from the NFL, but his legacy was far from being defined by what he'd done on the field. Instead, he focused on creating a legacy of impact. He poured his heart into the Travis Foundation, a non-profit dedicated to helping injured athletes transition to life after sports. The foundation became a beacon for those who, like Jordan, found themselves at a crossroads after an injury. The goal was simple: to empower athletes to build a new life, filled with purpose and possibilities beyond sports. Through therapy programs, career counseling, financial aid for education, and personal mentorship, Jordan provided a safety net to countless individuals who might have otherwise been forgotten. At every seminar, every event, every meeting, Jordan spoke with the passion of a man who understood the pain of loss and the strength required to rise again. It wasn't long before Jordan became a sought-after motivational speaker, traveling across the country, speaking to audiences that ranged from high school athletes to corporate leaders. His story wasn't just about sports. It was about life. About finding strength in the face of adversity. About rising above your circumstances when everything inside you tells you to give up. At each event, he shared the same message. It's not about how many times you fall. It's about how many times you get back up. Every time you rise, you prove that you're more than your circumstances. You're a fighter. And that fight is what defines you. But the real transformation happened when Jordan realized something that few ever do. The pain of retirement, the loss of identity that comes with leaving the field, had turned into his greatest strength. He wasn't just Jordan Travis, the football player. He was Jordan Travis, the survivor. The man who didn't let life's hardest moments define him. He began mentoring young athletes and teams, helping them understand that the game isn't just played on the field. It's played in every moment of your life, in every challenge, in every setback. How you choose to face those moments is what truly matters. Jordan never asked for statues. He never sought out fame or accolades. He didn't need the NFL Hall of Fame. His legacy was already cemented in the hearts of those who had been touched by his story. But still, his alma mater, Florida State University, honored him in the most fitting way. They retired his number 13 jersey, a symbol of his unforgettable impact on the program. His legacy was not only etched into the record books, but into the spirit of every Seminole who followed in his footsteps. The university would hold a ceremony where Jordan stood in front of thousands, as the crowd roared their appreciation. It wasn't the applause that moved him. It wasn't the cheers. It was the quiet moments, the letters he received from kids who said they never gave up because of his story. The emails from former teammates who remembered what it was like to witness his fight, his leadership, his relentless will to push through. He was more than a player. He was a hero. He was a symbol of strength. In 2029, Jordan Travis received an unexpected call. It was from the NFL Hall of Fame. They wanted to induct him, not for his statistics, not for the number of games he played, but for the impact he had on the sport, on the people he inspired. The Hall of Fame ceremony wasn't just about Jordan's time in the NFL. It was about what he had become, a leader, a voice, and an example of how to overcome the biggest challenges life can throw at you. During his final interview before the ceremony, Jordan spoke softly but with the same conviction he'd always had. I didn't get into football for the fame. I didn't play for the records or the championships. I played because the game gave me a purpose. And when that was taken from me, I had to find another one. I had to learn that life doesn't always give you what you want, but it always gives you what you need. I didn't just fight for football. I fought for my life. And that's something no one can ever take from me. Jordan Travis's story didn't end when he left the field. It didn't end with his retirement, or even with his induction into the Hall of Fame. His legacy lived on in the lives of those he touched, in the athletes he helped, the fans he inspired, and the people who saw his journey and found the strength to keep fighting their own battles. Because Jordan Travis didn't just play the game. He changed it. And that's how you know you've left a true legacy.